Welcome to Product Momentum, a community of thought leaders and learners coming together to celebrate the product people who are shaping our way ahead. Inspired by our most pressing questions and insightful guests, we'll explore the challenges you face and offer practical, hands-on guidance your team can implement today. This is Product Momentum. Here are your hosts, Sean Flaherty and Paul Gable.
Paul, man, what a great episode.
Sean, that was, they say never meet your heroes, but I don't know. That was a blast.
Shivers up my spine.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
John unpacked a lot of life lessons, business lessons, technology lessons. What was one that stood out to you as something that people should take away from this?
Oh, there were so many. Risk-averse. Like, we have to really pay attention to the risks. The theme that really stuck with me throughout all of his stuff, from his keynote this morning to the talk today, was about how we should always keep our eye on that all-important ball of our family. Like, take care of your mom.
Yep.
Like, make sure that the relationships in your life are sound. You know, all of the technology is amazing. Like, we center a lot of our discussions around it, but the real purpose of it is so that we can have better relationships.
Yeah. And there's kind of an unhealthy imbalance that comes in when we are only playing to win. Players play to maybe win.
Yeah.
And that's a really realistic human aspect of risk-averseness and being able to get comfortable with the fact of we're in this to make the world a better place, to improve the lives of those around us, to remember to call your moms. But that's why John Maeda wrote the books that he's written, The Laws of Simplicity, Speaking Machine, to take this world of knowledge that's floating around in this amazing brain of his and put it into the hands of folks who can do some good in the world with it, right?
Absolutely. And it's exciting to be in front of a live audience, get to record this right after his talk. A lot of energy in the room. There's
a lot of energy. I hope this comes through. I think if you're a designer, a product manager, a human being, you're going to get something out of it.
You are. Let's get after it.
Let's get after it. All right, we're live.
Okay.
Welcome, everybody. We are just coming off a fantastic opening talk, remarks by John Maeda. He's been a powerhouse for the industry. He's been an inspirational leader for me throughout my career. My introduction of John is going to double as my first question to you. You're a guy who wrote a book, among other things. Of the many things that you've been and done, what is the title that you're most proud of? What's the thing that you would prefer to be introduced as or remembered by? You spent a lot of time in your talk.
I'm my mother's cook.
Love it.
I love that.
Of all the things, I think that's one that I would hang on to too. You jumped on so many ideas in the talk that we're just coming off of. One of the things your mother's short video included that really inspired me was the idea of what people remember as they're dying, and letting yourself being happy is not a topic that you would expect to start a product and design conference off with. But I think it's a good moment of reflection, just as we're getting started in a day of very deep, very technical, very artistic ideas. Why did that make it into your talk? What is about that landed and was important to carry on and pass on?
Well, you know, the thing that changed my life was something someone told me in my 40s. It's one of my mentors who's also dead. All my mentors are dead. It's unfortunate, really. Got to remember that, you know?
Yeah.
He said that I had just gotten the job as president of a university, and they called me up, this mentor of mine, and he said, "Hey, John, you got that job kind of early. You should get that when you're in your 50s. It's kind of early." I said, well, his name was Mitz. He was just a character. He was in his 70s at the time, and they said to me, "You know, well, John, life is lived in 4 quarters. 4 quarters of age, 0 to 25 years, 25 to 50, 50 to 75 years, 75 to 100. And he said, "John, don't forget that most people don't make it to the 4th quarter." So I was thinking there was 4. Then he said there's only 3. So that's kind of a bummer. And he said, "Don't forget, you just finished your 1st quarter, that's all gone." So it's like seeing 4 light bulbs you're given. One went out, poof. The other went out, poof. And he had 2 light bulbs left. And he said, "And don't forget, in your 3rd quarter, your body starts to deteriorate." And I was like, okay, that's like a shaky light bulb in the 3rd quarter. So he said, make the most of your 2nd quarter. I thought it was the best advice to get. you know? So I think in your third quarter, like I'm in my third quarter, I think about things like death and what occurs and things like that. So that's why I like to remind ourselves that some of us are lucky to live long lives, some are less lucky to live short lives. And if you do live life and you think about that as the goal, it makes you more aware. It may make you create a better product, design better, make a better business. That's where I stand.
Amazing.
Happiness is important, right?
Yeah.
And I'm very impressed with the dedication that you've had for your family and where you've gone. When I look at your life, because I've been following you since the beginning of the internets, Laws of Simplicity was like a earth-shattering book at the time. This is the guy that actually sat down to codify design.
Yeah.
It was a brilliant guiding principles for how we're going to put things together in the world. And you know, when you build software, you're building things that don't exist. Like everything we do is vaporware, like until it's not. But you've crafted a life that's been really interesting. And kind of like if you were to look back at it and say, hey, how did I get here from there? Like, I'm curious what your theme is. Like, what is the theme that kind of runs through the decisions that you make about where you go?
Oh. Well, it's actually quite easy because I come from I'm a first generation to go to college person. Mm-hmm. Anyone else like that in this room?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a really good experience to have. Not saying those who didn't have that experience, you're bad people, but it's very useful because you didn't know what you could become, which is a terrible handicap. Mm. And for some, it stays as a handicap. But for a small few, it seems to be a blessing because you don't know what you're doing, and therefore you don't have a guide. You know, your grandfather did this and this and this, you know. My grandfather was a carpenter, which is all good, you know, but I didn't have a guide. And so after I had done a few things, I kept losing reference. You have to realize that when I got to MIT, which was my parents' dream, for one of us to go to college, when I mean my siblings, I got there. Well, first off, we didn't know what the M stood for until it was too late. It was Massachusetts. And I was like, whoa, where is that place? I was like growing up in Seattle, so I was like, whoa, that's far. Then I got to the East Coast. You know, my first week, there's all these like upper class people studying for this test. I was like, what is this test? Well, it's called the GREs. I said, what is that? I thought we did the SAT already. What's that one? And I was learning about something called graduate school. So I called up my parents and I said, there's something called graduate school. And my dad said, you better go to that. But at some point, you have no reference to what you can do, and then you're kind of free. And so I like to pursue things that I don't know, and sometimes have the luxury of surviving entry into that outer space. And I fail a lot. You know, people tell me, oh my gosh, you've been so successful. I was like, oh, you've never seen how many times I've failed. But I like that when Mandela, the great Mandela passed away, there were all these quotes, like in every newspaper. Wow, what a life, you know? And my favorite one was, don't judge me by my successes, judge me by how many times I fell down and picked myself up again.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's a really great segue into the way that you kicked off your talk in the context of a victim versus a player, right? Mm. And for those who weren't able to join the adventure we just shared in the auditorium a few moments ago, the very, very brief version was that a player is, it's a choice. It's a mindset that you choose to engage in. And the way that you phrased it was that players don't play to win, they play to maybe win. And that is exactly what you were just jumping into. I think the ideas of AI right now, to take a turn into the more technical out of philosophy mountain, to talk about where we are in the AI context, the AI business landscape, the AI engineering and design landscape. There's so much that we can be afraid of, that we can contextualize ourselves as victims around. It's going to take my job. it's going to be a competitive force against me, or it's going to enable us to get into that blue space that you talked about in your talk. Can you unpack, just for those who are listening for the first time, what were those three sort of concentric squares of the spaces that we can play with AI in maybe a way to give us a snapshot to jump off of?
Right. Well, that framing is from Professor Brynjolfsson. He was MIT, now he's Stanford. He's like the real expert on productivity and AI.
Yeah.
There's three zones. The first one is the yellow zone, the things that we humans can do. In that set of things, there is a set, it's marked in my diagram as black, the things that AI could do for you instead. And then if you zoom out, there's a big bluer ocean that this yellow block is sitting in, of all the things you can now do because you have AI to tap into. And the reason why I'm not surprised that most people are afraid of it is because they don't understand it. And I want to reiterate that like 99% of computer science people do not understand or have used it in their actual work because they're too busy pushing regular code, not because it's bad, it's because they're just busy. And so anyone who's afraid of it is afraid of it because they don't understand it. That's why in the space of when I was in the security industry, especially with supply chain during the pandemic, one of the supply chain experts talked about how you have to be risk-versed, not risk-averse.
Interesting. Yeah.
So to go after that blue zone of possibility, you need to be risk-versed. Yeah. And the way you be risk-versed is you understand. That's why we went through in the talk kind of briefly. AI is understandable. It just takes your attention to go there. That's why I wrote How to Speak Machine, yep, to lay the foundations to enable people to understand what I now understand much better. Because if I didn't write that book, I don't think I could blah, blah, blah like this.
I'm going to tie a couple of these themes together. Thoughts floating around my mind here. So we play to play. Players play to play. But really, the human condition, what makes us happy is to create. And I loved how you answered my question about the theme of your life. So when I asked it, I said, you know, when we sign up to build software, we're building vaporware. We're creating something that doesn't exist yet. Mm-hmm. And your answer was really kind of profound. Like, we have this potential and it's a choice. It's a choice. We have this potential and we can create whatever we want out of the future. It's our job to think of it that way so we can step into it. And I think AI it's been, at least for me, it's been a power tool. You mentioned a couple of ways in which you used it even this morning, writing your blog post. It like has the potential to help you create an even better future and to create a more profound next thing. Yeah, because it gets rid of some of the cognitive load so we can actually do more with our creative energy. That's what I see.
No, thank you for that framing, actually. I've been trying to understand this thing about you're saying we love to create. And I was like, oh yeah. So like, we love to create. Is that true or not? Some people can create. Some people prefer to boss others around.
You mentioned bosses a lot today. Yeah. There's a theme there.
Bosses. Well, you know, if you're not independent, you always have a boss, right? And even if you're a CEO, you have a board. So I say it not in a pejorative way. I love bosses. I love good bosses. But the idea of creating is, you know, we think that artists love to create, designers love to create, programmers love to create. You know, I mean, I should understand this phrase because, you know, one thing I love, when I used to advocate for the arts, when I was running the Round School of Design, I was able to really kind of think about, you know, what that is and what that means. And one thing I used to say in that era was how powerful art is, and anyone who is a parent knows this, is when your kid you can't stand them, right? Sometimes, I mean, of course we love them and all, but some like, oh, well,
Paul's dad's over there, by the way.
Oh, sorry. Oh, different for you, of course, sir. But it's like you realize that when they make a picture for you at school and they give it to you, it's like the best money ever. And It's like, it says dad. I'm sure you have a few of those, like dad. Oh, dad. Okay, you're okay, kid. Somehow they made art, and their giving art changed the relationship. So I think creativity is the foundation of creating capital. That capital is emotional capital, sometimes financial capital, but it is a thing that maybe we humans are wired to do if you are not the boss. Yeah. Because you have to create value.
Well, you're a good boss, of course.
I love good bosses. Yeah.
Yeah. You did have at least two admonitions that I picked up on. One being from your Professor Weizenbaum about powerful tools in the hands of wrong people, which I'd be curious for your thoughts as how this relates. And the second was, why isn't AI everywhere already? There's a bit of a paradox where everyone's talking about it, we're talking about it right now, and yet nobody's actually figured out what it means to use it. Where are these productivity gains? Where is the speed? Why isn't the roadmap moving left? And everyone is expecting it to happen. Kind of, there's a state of anticipation right now, and yet it's an already but not yet situation. So I'm curious, those two ideas of powerful tools in the hands of, I'll say wrong people. You can correct me if
bad bosses.
Bad bosses, and the idea of why isn't it everywhere, even though it already seems to be everywhere. These two ideas seem to be warnings of sorts, and I'm wondering if you can help us unpack that just a little bit more.
What is my thing about bosses? You're right. I don't know.
Something repressed.
Over time, I've just met so many people with bosses that I think I never thought of it as a construct. I think when I was an MIT professor, you're like a Jedi, so you're like super powerful. I think after I left that, I became aware that I don't have a Kevlar vest anymore, so I'm just a regular person. Regular people have bosses, and it's good, I like the phrase, you don't choose a job, you choose a boss. One of my favorite ones. What was your question?
There were two ideas that you shared that are resonating with me, that seem like they should mean something, that I want to try to give folks a way to apply. The ideas of powerful tools in the hands of, I'll say, wrong people, or bad bosses. Yeah. Or the idea that AI seems to be everywhere, and yet we're not necessarily, maybe it's limited to the business world. But these two ideas seem to be something we can unpack.
You said the bosses, that's why I treat the bosses. Powerful tools in the hands of the wrong people, in general, is a theme of every technology story.
Yeah.
If you've seen Oppenheimer, you know the story. The story is, if you create something extremely powerful, it's really amazing, but then now when it's available, who gets to have it? And I think some people forget the fact, there's this famous prize called the Nobel Peace Prize, that many of the younger generation probably don't know that Alfred Nobel invented dynamite. And dynamite was one of the cause of the most deaths in any war, but also was good because it saved miners' lives for not having to crawl into rocks and sort of use their hands and picks. So positives and negatives. And so every technology, that's why the science, technology, society field exists. It's very important to ask these questions. There's always positives and negatives. We tend to focus on the negatives so much that we forget that everything technological is good, is actually not always bad. Who likes to drive to somewhere to see their parents? Well, some of you don't like your parents, but you know what I mean. It's pretty useful to have that car technology with us. Your second question was about AI. Why is this AI not so common? It's because it's still scarce. It is actually the best variants of this. It's like the vaccine, I guess. I know some people have the vaccine, some people don't, or vaccines, that's a touchy topic, I forgot. It is something that's scarce. It's like platinum still. So if you don't know what it is or you've only touched a version of it that's probably copper, not the platinum version.
Interesting.
Because it's still very scarce, and that scarcity is beginning to diminish, and so that's when you'll see more impact of it in everyday life.
Yeah, you said something in the talk about how AI has this, because we're gullible, and Daniel Kahneman proved this whole, relationship between negative and positive. Like we're wired for that negativity, right? And the gullibility of humans you talked about specifically. The quote is around short exposures from the stuff can induce delusional thinking, and like that's the bad tool. Yeah.
Why are we gullible? Why did Kahneman say we're gullible? Do you remember?
It's miswiring in the we have a fast brain and a slow brain.
Oh, that's the gullibility.
When the fast brain is working, there's these cognitive disconnects because the brain's trying for efficiency and it makes mistakes.
Oh, that's where we're gullible.
It's going too fast.
Well, I mean, in the world of large language models, slow thinking and fast thinking is used as well. When it's hallucinating, it's because it's doing fast thinking. It has you give it no context. The best way, and you're already seeing it in some of the technology you're using with ChatGPT, et cetera, is it's called thinking out loud. What happens is before the LLM produces an output, if you give to the LLM, think out the steps before you give them the answer, and it just thinks out loud, now give them the answer, like a human or like an intern. It's able to produce the next token better. Not because it's sentient, it's because the way these systems work is that they take a stream of text, and if you start with a very little text and try to predict the next token, we'd all get it wrong. Like if the phrase were like, I'm John, I like, I don't know, you're gonna guess, ice cream, puppies, wood, or whatever. But if I gave you a longer sentence, I really like the forest. I'm John. I like wood or green or whatever. So the more context you give a predictor, it can predict the next token better. So when you think out loud, you're producing a stream of text of thinking out loud. Now solve the problem. The next prediction will be more correct. So this is like system 2, deep thinking, versus system 1, no thinking.
Interesting.
We have a couple questions from the audience I want to make sure we get in here since we have just a few moments left. This went so fast. The first, going back to the very beginning, someone in the audience wanted to know, what is your favorite meal to cook for your mother?
Oh, she's so picky. And your taste buds change at that age. Anyone who's been a caregiver, raise your hand, you know that. Their taste buds change. Like, wow, I thought you liked this. No, it tastes terrible. So, oh no, I got to get a different kind of shopping now. She liked mushrooms, now she doesn't like it. So I can't tell you, I don't know. That's stressful for me every day.
Okay. Fair. We'll back off that one. I have one more question of my own, and then I'm going to close with another audience question. Yeah. Your allusion, I think, to three-body problem about hydrating and desiccating. I don't know if that was intentional or not. Yeah. About the engineer, the creator, the designer, using this tool. You mentioned it yourself in the blog post that you wrote in 30 seconds, and you're able to put something out in your own voice, and it's in the world now.
Most weird.
And there is a feeling now that we can create so much. There's a saturation, but users can only consume, what the bandwidth can endure. Yeah. So is there a decision that we need to force into our workflows that triggers this is fine for AI, but humans are the limiting factor? And how we can be more contextually aware of the audience for whom we're creating, if that makes sense.
No, I think what's so exciting is that we really are in the unknown quadrant for how to manage this. Like, I love high school students who are trying to figure this out, where I don't mean anything against teachers, because teachers are so busy right now to do their regular stuff. The teachers are too busy to cope with this new technology in their classrooms, so there's a lot about empathy for them. It is a quantum leap. Suddenly, you don't just have a calculator that can do math faster, you have a calculator that can do every possible homework faster. Mm-hmm. What do you do when a teacher clearly doesn't understand that this isn't the future, it's occurred?
Yeah.
And then it gets worse in college, because the professors are the same way. Like at least 99% are going to be way behind. And so the students are smart because they're afraid, will I be able to get a meaningful job if I'm slowed down in school through that 12 plus 4 years? Will I be relevant? So I guess I kind of feel like we need to be aware that if we are in an advanced part of our careers, we need to actually facilitate running at speed and enabling other parts, other sectors to catch up much quicker, because that divide is going to be increasingly felt. And people can argue that's bad or that's wrong or that's whatever, but this occurred when electricity came on the scenes. I heard a story once about how there was once the greatest country on earth. It happened to be named Great Britain. It was the 1800s. You asked the one country that could produce the things, manufacture the things the fastest, ship it anywhere in the world, any size. It was Great Britain. It was because its factories were all powered by this amazing technology called steam power. And it was the most amazing technology ever. And then in the late 1800s, this like startup technology called electricity sort of appeared. And what did the steam powered people say? Never going to take off. And in the United States, didn't have the same kind of factory infrastructure, so in steam. So we invest in electricity, and that achieved outsized gains.
Interesting.
So it's a question of, do we want to choose to be disrupted or not? Is it a technocentric view of the world? I think it's more of an economic advantage view of the world that it's good to consider as a player. With a conscience, mind you.
Yeah. One more question from the audience.
We have one last, and I'm going to paraphrase it slightly. The way that they worded it was, what's the most important thing you'd like us to learn today? Since I'm sure there are too many to list, I'll ask an alternate version. What's the thing that you hope to inspire us with as we leave the room for the rest of the day?
Oh, I didn't come to inspire anyone.
Okay. Okay.
No, I'm just randomly here in Rochester because I thought it was, what is his name? Ralph, the CEO. I mean, I came to see Ralph clearly. I mean, I didn't know Ralph, and I had dinner with Ralph, and I was moved. Is this guy Greg? Ralph and Greg. I mean, Ralph and Greg. They're like Oreos or something. I don't know, but they're really good together. And I kind of felt like I love seeing friends, longtime friends that choose to stay friends and support each other. So I think, I hope in life you're lucky to have a friend like that. I think that's important. Some people get to have it, some people don't. It'd be nice if we all had that.
Yeah.
I have some of that, and I want more of that, yeah.
And take care of your mom.
Take care of your mom.
The mom part, I know it's finite. This will end.
Yeah.
And when it ends, I'll be sad, kind of happy, but kind of sad, more sad. Just living it.
Well, John, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us.
Likewise. Thanks for the conversation.
It's been great. Yeah. And one last quick question.
Yeah.
What are you reading? What inspires you these days?
Reading. Well, I had the most inspiring conversation with this person over here, the designer over here. I read, we did a lot together, right? We read online, Temple Grandin, we talked about empathy, cattle slaughter, all kind of stuff, right? I thought it was a good book to read. I was reading her book, her brain. It's a good book.
Outstanding. Well, thank you, John.
Thanks for joining us today. Thanks for everyone for listening in.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for today. In line with our goals of transparency and listening, we really want to hear from you. Sean and I are committed to reading every piece of feedback that we get, so please leave a comment or a rating wherever you're listening to this podcast. Not only does it help us continue to improve, but it also helps the show climb up the rankings so that we can help other listeners move, touch, and inspire the world just like you're doing. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next episode.